What's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. And today I'm going to talk about why these two games have put a little bit of a damper on my excitement for next generation and made me realize something that I kind of already knew, but I wanted to talk about it in a full discussion video on the channel. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. This is not attacking the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X. I'm going to be picking up both of those systems. I'm going to be picking up Spider-Man Miles Morales and Halo Infinite. I'm looking forward to those games. But one thing that I've noticed is that while everyone's talking about graphics fidelity and frame rates and all of this stuff, heck, we're even talking about it here with the next Switch and DLSS 2.0 and all of that. Like, if you look at the core game, that's the most important thing. Look at the core game and look at what that game does. I mean, if you look at this past generation or this current generation that we're in, we're transitioning over to the next generation. While games played better, while games are fantastic, games did all sorts of stuff, I found myself liking the previous gen way more than I liked this current gen. And it's funny because the two games that I just showed you guys right here and that are going to be the focus for this video, Persona 5 Royal and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, both of those games were done on the previous systems. Persona 5 is on PS3. The Royal version isn't. They could have made it on there, but obviously there's no point since that system's dead at this point, the PS3. And then The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was a cross-gen game on the Wii U and also on the Nintendo Switch. And of course, there's better performance resolution, whatever the case is, on the newer systems. But the core gameplay of what those games did were still possible on the previous generation systems for the respective companies. So that's why, to me, at least in my opinion, it comes down to the actual game. You can talk about tech, you can talk about frame rate, you can talk about all that stuff, and yes, that's all very important. But at the end of the day, as long as you meet a minimum quality when it comes to things and there's innovative ideas, you can actually rise above any of that tech stuff. For me, at least, Persona 5 Royal, let's just talk about that game first, then we'll get into The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Persona 5 Royal is a game that is nowhere near on the technical level of other games out there on the PS4. I mean, The Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, I mean, you have just some games that just have some crazy tech built into it for PS4 games. Heck, even if you look at it from Xbox or PC or whatever the case is, yet I find myself saying this is the best game on the PlayStation 4, hands down, and I don't even think it's close. It's so much better than the other games because of its pacing, because of its content, because of its style, because of its innovation within the genre. And we're not counting independent developers. Obviously, they do some great stuff too. But to me, Persona 5 Royal checks all the boxes and just looks good enough. It has the style over the actual raw tech. And to me, it's a prettier and a more stylish and fun game to play and to look at than many of the other games that have way better graphics. Persona 5 Royal, to me, just shows that it's not about necessarily the graphics, right? It's not about all about the tech and how powerful it is. It's about what you do with that tech and how you execute the game, because there's so many cool aspects, especially with Royal. I already thought that Persona 5 was my favorite PS4 game, easy, hands down, and that was before the Royal Edition. Now that I'm playing through Royal, I'm 15 hours plus into the game, and I'm just having a blast with all the additions and cool stuff that they've added in. But on top of that, like I said, it just shows me that it's about the gameplay. It's smooth, it's silky, it's fast, it's responsive. There's plenty of options for Demon Fusion. It's one of those games that don't come around too often. Like when you play a game like Persona 5 Royal, it really is unique. And I think that's what sets apart this game and goes beyond the boundaries of technology. Is what do you do that's unique? There's enough familiarity with the game, with a turn-based RPG, but then they add in so many sprinkles of different things that make you say, wow, that's different. That's really cool. That's really fun. Oh, that's sweet that they added that in there. And every single time that I play it, I get that feeling. Whereas a lot of games that I've played this generation, you know, on all different systems, it's like, okay, I've kind of done that before. Okay, yeah, graphics looking good, great. I mean, yeah, that was fun. It was pretty good, but it was just an okay experience. It wasn't anything that kind of blew my mind for games that, you know, that are getting super high ratings, right? Because we've had a lot of games getting 90s plus and all this stuff like that, right? And then when you play it, you're like, okay, that's really a 90. I mean, I've done that a million times before. Whereas with Persona, even though I've played a JRPG a million times, this one just stands out in terms of modern RPGs. You know, we're not talking about like the old school like Chrono Trigger and all that stuff like that, but in terms of modern RPGs, this one just stands out of the rest, and it's just such a fun and great experience. And will that experience be on the PlayStation 5 day one? Probably not. Will that experience come to the Xbox Series X anytime soon? Probably not, you know, like probably not, considering what they're trying to go for. Now, obviously Atlas needs to make their next Persona game, but guessing on how long it takes to make Persona games, we're not going to see anything anytime soon when it comes down to like the next Persona, like actually the next one, not like Persona 5 Scramble or something like that, but Persona 6, you know. So for me, it's just not exciting. It's not as exciting as I'm playing through these games, and I already know good and well that these games right here are probably going to be better than most of the games that come out anytime soon for the next generation. Now, let's kind of move over to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, because I love this game, right? I've talked about it. If you haven't seen my review, or if you're somebody new, I actually did a review of the game this year where I went back and I played a lot of the content that I didn't play. I did the challenges, True Splendor Master Sword. Like, I went through and really reevaluated the game, because I never gave it a review score. I never gave it like a point total or anything like that. I just talked about it a lot and how much I liked the game. But Breath of the Wild is one of those games, really, it's a once in a, 10, 15 years, something like that. I really haven't played a game like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and what it does with its dynamic weather, what it does with its equipment system and how that factors into things, what it does with just the freedom of being able to go anywhere, climb up pretty much anything, soar through the skies, manipulate the environment in order to be to your advantage. And I think that's the coolest thing about Breath of the Wild. People can talk about the Z targeting combat system, you can talk about all the different shrines and puzzles, which those are great, but it's how you use the environment and how the environment reacts to you. It is a true open world game, in my opinion, where the open world is literally the gameplay elements of the game, which I haven't seen too many games do. Now, some games, yes, you can travel, you can explore, you can look at certain things, you can climb, you can do that. But what other open world game has you manipulating the environment and using something like a Sheikah Slate in order to go on the offensive or the defensive when it comes to enemies, or even solving puzzles to gain whatever you need to get? There's so many different ways and so many different options that you have to fight, to solve puzzles, to traverse the environment, and that is the most unique and best thing about Breath of the Wild. That's, in my opinion, what it does so well, because they can use that supernatural element in open world. They can say, okay, we're gonna take this Sheikah Slate, it has magnetic powers, you can use it to make ice to go across a river, you can use it to do so many different things, you can have infinite bombs, right, and blow stuff up. I mean, you can take this glider and you can hang through the skies, you can do so many different things, and that's why so many people have these crazy videos on YouTube and on Twitter of them manipulating the environment and using like stasis and blasting themselves off and just doing crazy things, because it really is a creative palette of you going through this majestic world and just doing things that you just can't do in other games. So it's just so cool to go back this year and play the game and realize how good it is. And of course, both of these games are with its faults, you know, when it comes to Persona 5 and also when it comes to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. But the good things about the game and the innovation so outweigh the bad, in my opinion. These are the two games of the generation for me. They're the two games that I said, wow, in terms of Nintendo Switch and also PlayStation 4, that really just made me say, you know what, man, like, it's not about all of this other stuff. Like, it's about the gameplay. Are we going to be able to get games that are as good as this? Are we going to be able to get games that innovate like this? And the answer is no. Every game is obviously not going to be able to be as good as these games, but at the same time, I think it's pretty cool, you know, looking at the scope of gaming, right, and what can be done, and challenging developers to say, okay, we're going to try this out, or we're going to do this. You know, there's lots of inspiration from these two games that I'm pretty sure developers are going to take when it comes to Persona and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which we've already seen with Breath of the Wild in terms of inspiration from many other games. So I'm excited to see what developers do just going forward in the future. But honestly, Persona 5 Royal, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, two of the best games that I've ever played, and easily two of the best games of this generation. But on a final note here, guys, what do you think about Persona 5 Royal, and what do you think about Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild? What are your thoughts on the upcoming generation? Are you super excited for what's going to be happening? Are you not so excited? Are you more worried about the gameplay? You think developers are focusing on one aspect over another too much? I mean, personally, for me, I think that graphics are obviously being really blown up here, and I get that because it's the next generation, but I think people should also want those gameplay improvements in terms of innovation into their games. So that's just my personal thought, but not everybody likes that, right? Some people just want the same games and how they play till the end of time, you know, so I understand that too. Like, I get that from that standpoint, just because if it's not broke, don't fix it type of thing, right? So what are you guys' thoughts on all this? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Check out the links in the description. We've got Twitter. Go and give us a follow on there. Stay up to date on all the latest gaming news and information. Also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video if you can. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.